The member for Dobell. The question is that the bill be now read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Can I say from the outset I support this bill and I support what the government is trying to do. In question time yesterday, the Treasurer was answering a question in relation to small business and in relation to the economy. And so we've made a good start, but we've got a lot of work to do. Can I suggest that this is a good start, but we've got a lot of work to do when it comes to small business? There are some real issues around small business and around this, particularly the subcontractor, that I'd like to concentrate on in my contribution here. The nature of unfair contracts and the nature of work and construction seems to have changed. It seems to me that the way that work is done, once upon a time the contractor, you tender for a job and you do the job. But it seems to be now that someone tenders for a job and they become the lead contractor, but they don't do any of the work. They're the developer, but they don't do any of the work. The person who carries all the risk is the subcontractor. The person who carries all the debt, all the risk, all the pays is the subcontractor. If I can give you an example, we had a flight simulator built at RAF Base in Townsville. Fantastic job, and people line up to do government work because they're assured of being paid. And this was just after I was elected. The developer, as opposed to the winner of the tender, and it was a fair and open tender, had numerous other projects going around the country. One of the projects with which they had a real issue was a swimming pool complex in South Australia. Now, because of their bad work on that, or supposed bad work or technicalities on that job, what happened there was that bloke went into receivership, went into liquidation and was wound up. My subcontractors in Townsville, thinking that they were doing government work, were fully exposed. Now, at the end of the day, you can't go back and get your concrete back. You can't pull the steel you put in the concrete out of the foundations. You can't do it. So, as a brand new Member of Parliament, as a brand new person in the role, someone's coming to me saying, "I've done this government work and we're not getting paid." Well, thump the table and say, "That's what we're here for, mate. Bloody Labor, they'll stick it to you every time." And it turns out, and I go back and I go to my guys, and I say, "Mate, unless they have a contract signed by the government, they don't have a contract with us. They're not doing government work." So whilst we are talking about this sort of thing and people being screwed for price on government work because you're assured of getting paid, they carry everything. They carry all the risk. There are two things for which we can't legislate in this place. We can't legislate for greed and we can't legislate for stupidity. So what we have to do is make sure that when we are processing down this way, I think it's part of the broader picture of the nature of business and the nature of construction. I'm an auctioneer by trade, and the auctioneer's creed is to leave $1 in it for the next guy. You can't just wipe him clean every time he comes in because he can't make any money out of it. It seems to me that the way construction of government stuff and roads and that sort of thing, the big contracts are done, the profit, instead of being left over at the end, is taken at the front. They've structured in how much profit they need to make at the front. And I say these words with absolutely no factual base whatsoever, but these are the sorts of things that are coming to me in the pubs and in my office and the streets when I'm talking to subcontractors. That it's the big end of town that takes their profit first, and the subcontractor down the bottom is left to accept the price or not get work. The problem we have when we get into that space is that and the member for Flynn is in here, and he's a good man, and he's driven trucks and he's done all this stuff. The problem you have is that when you are that lone driver, owner-operator, and the bloke from the big contractor comes up and says, "That's the price," or you're promised about $1,200 a day to run your truck and everything like that, and that sounds all right. So you commit to the work, knowing that that's all right. But then they turn out and they change the goalpost and say, "That's the price." You're already in so far. How do you get out? How do they get out? If a subcontractor, if the developer or winner of the major contract is struggling for cash and the subcontractor is not getting paid, how long does the subcontractor leave it before he walks away? When is he prepared to make the complaint? Who's going to make the complaint? I had an owner-operator come and see me the other day. and it was in a job in Townsville, and it was reasonably close to the quarry. His end rate, and he couldn't really work out how much an hourly rate or how much it was. His rate was $1.84 a tonne to deliver. So he wasn't paid an hourly rate; he was just paid a tonnage rate. Now, I have situations in Townsville where truck drivers, the break-even is about truck drivers with a dog and trailer with a quad dog tipper. They have to modify their trucks to make sure that they have automatic the curtain things that go over the top, automatic covers and all this sort of stuff. They have to do all that. They get in there, but these guys are signing up for about $80 an hour, knowing full well that their break-even is about $140 an hour, and to make a profit they need to make at least $160 an hour. And yet they're signing these contracts and they're doing these things in the hope that they will, because they're turning wheels, that something will happen, that they will end up better. Now, this ombudsman here is a great idea, but it is not going to fix that. It is not going to fix that nature of that thing. What we have to do is go back and have a look at the very nature of the way the tender process and the way business is conducted in this country. As I said before, when I was a young bloke, my dream job was to be a final trim grader driver, because I figured that that's a bit of art. You could use your fingers and everything like that. The nature of technology, the nature of all these things, the nature of the job changes. And what we have done over a long period of time is we have changed the rules around which business runs. We have just had a builder, not on a government job but on a private job, but the job is for a very large not-for-profit church-based organisation. The builder or developer has gone under, and every subcontractor in Townsville who has worked on that is basically going to walk away, I reckon, with very little. This happens a lot. Now, people go broke. As an auctioneer, I worked a lot in the insolvency industry. And my company, the companies for whom I worked, or for which I worked, made a lot of money out of these things. The Keating recession was a fantastic time for auctioneers, and even when the economy is going well, it's an even better time for auctioneers because people have got more money to buy the stuff off you. But what we have done is that the tender process has become convoluted and conflicted and confused. That it is no longer about driving value for the tax dollar and driving the value through our economy more than once. I can give you one example here, and it's not particularly related to this bill, but the logistics hub at Laverack Barracks is a $120 million job. It's a fantastic facility. And Lend-Lease won or Balderstones, now Lend-Lease, won the tender fair and square. But their major subcontractor was an organisation called Shamrock. Now, Shamrock have an office in Townsville. They have about 6 people working in that office. But their guys were fly in, fly out, and they brought all their equipment up from Brisbane. The local guys, even though they live here, could not make their price to do the work. So whilst we're spending, and Senator David Johnston was the Minister for Defence at the time, he said, you'd be really happy with that $120 million going into your economy. I said, it's not really. Because the $120 million, the facility gets built, but there's no apprentices, there's no tradies going through, so that $120 million flushed through our economy just once. And the only person who was putting money on, putting people on, was the bloke who ran Hungry Jack's across the road. He's the only guy making the money out of it. What we have to do as a parliament here, especially when it comes to government work, is make sure that money flushes through our economies more than once. And I think that the tender process in this space has become convoluted and confused, so that it becomes harder and harder and harder for someone to take a bite of it and become the principal contractor for that part of it. And that's where it leads down to our subcontractors being exposed. What we have to do is understand the nature of business, and when people get desperate, when times are tough. And can I tell you, although there is a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff happening in Townsville, there's a lot of building going on, there's a lot of federal government money going on, and we are a very good town. But confidence is brittle. And a lot of what this government has done in relation to the small business project has done a fantastic thing in Townsville. But small business is more than just the instant asset write-off, and we understand that the nature of getting rid of red tape and everything is very important in this. But what we have to do is understand that the way business is being conducted these days is very different. And as I said before, and I want to make the point again, it seems to me that the person who doesn't lose is the person who never loses. That the person who never loses is the person with the least risk. Surely we have to look at these things. And when this thing goes bad, when these guys go bad and we go to the we go to the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman, we're not going, not in every case are we able to get their money. And we're not guaranteeing that we're going to get their money. And no one can guarantee that we're going to get their money because that's not the way business works. That's not the way the world works. But the subcontractor in today's day and life, the subcontractor, the concreter, the truck driver, the chippy, the bloke who does the work, can't participate in the tender process anymore. So he can't get the guarantee of the work. He can't get the guarantee of the payment. And he's exposed. She's exposed. Their families are exposed, and they're the people who live in our electorates. These are the guys that we have to look after. And if we are talking about unfair contracts, and if someone does sign, if someone is offered a job at $1.84 a tonne, and he does go and complain, and he gets a thing, and he says that's an unfair contract, so they have to up their payments. What chances have he got of getting the work? They'll find some way of getting rid of him. At the moment, we've got blokes walking around, driving around, who are driving on rags on their trucks because although they're getting income, although they're getting turnover, they are steadily going backwards. We have to look seriously about the way we are doing these things in this country at the moment. The tender process, a tender for a job like this, is now about that thick. You've got all these things that go into it, and they turn, the state government, the federal government, turn it over, open it up, 1.1 million, 1.05 million, he gets it. So whilst there's 100% weighted on price, but not on value for money, we have a real issue. So this is good legislation. This is a good start. We have a very, very good Minister for Small Business who understands this. We have a very good Treasurer who understands this. But what we must do is drive this reform through COAG. We must drive this reform through COAG because until we can get to the stage where people can actually bid for work, where the tender can reflect the part that you want to make, they are not guaranteed payment at any stage for government work. And they are the ones who are carrying the risk. And I get, there's not a person in this place who wants subcontractors in their electorates or their state or their country to continue to be exposed. There's not one person in this place who does not understand the nature of business. There is not one person in this place who does not get that we must be better at this. But this has happened, and this has happened over a long period of time. And it's something that not one of us is happy about, getting belted in the street by people who come in and hit us up about them having done all this work, and because something happened on the other side of the country, they're out of pocket $100,000. Now, $100,000 on a $120 million job is not a lot of money. But $100,000 to an owner-operator of a truck with a quad dog is a massive amount of money. $100,000 to, or $50,000 to someone who's got 3 kids in school, who's got loan payments, who's got an overdraft. And when you've got no chance of getting that back, but you've got no chance to alter your circumstances in the first place, you've got no chance to participate where the money is guaranteed, that's where the fault lies. And that's what we as a parliament and what this country must do through COAG is work to the place where we can be better at making sure that these things comply, that people can have a go. You know, the Treasurer stood up there on budget night, and can I tell you, when he announced the small business package, I almost ran down there and hugged him. And I thought it was bloody spectacular. But unless we are doing what we need to do, unless we can fix this up for people to have that go, unless we can offer some sort of protection, unless we can increase participation and make it easier for people to have a slice out, the taxpayer must always be protected. But can I tell you, I don't believe that the current tender situation is actually producing a great result for the taxpayer. There are too many examples out there of too much going wrong. So I support this legislation, but I support this legislation because it is a step in the right direction. As the Treasurer and the Minister for Small Business and the Prime Minister have all said, this is a start. We've got a long way to go, but we're up for the job, and we've got to be up for the job. I thank the House.
I thank the member for